Waheshimiwa viongozi na wageni walikwa, tunakumbushwa kwamba wote muda wote tuwe tumevaa barakoa zetu kwa usahihi. Asanteni. Waheshimiwa viongozi, naomba tusimame kwa ajili ya kuwapokea marais. Mheshimiwa Rais, naomba tuendelee kusimama kwa ajili ya nyimbo za taifa na wimbo wa Afrika Mashariki. Naomba tukae. Mheshimiwa Samia Suluhu Hassan, Rais wa Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania. Mheshimiwa Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, Rais wa Jamhuri ya Uganda. Mheshimiwa Kassim Majaliwa, Waziri Mkuu wa Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania. Waheshimiwa mawaziri kutoka pande zote mbili wa Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania na Jamhuri ya Uganda. Waheshimiwa makatibu wakuu kutoka pande zote mbili. Waheshimiwa wafanyabiashara, wageni waalikwa. Mheshimiwa Rais, tupo hapa ikiwa ni siku ya pili ya ziara ya Rais wa Uganda Mheshimiwa Yoweri Kaguta Museveni kufuatia mwaliko wako. Kongamano hili ambalo leo hii mnalifunga Mheshimiwa Rais ni sehemu ya wafanyabiashara ambapo mlianza kujadili masuala ya mafuta na gesi katika ziara hii ya Mheshimiwa Rais Yoweri Kaguta Museveni. Kwa ridhaa yako Mheshimiwa Rais, naomba nimkaribishe Mheshimiwa Januari Makamba, Waziri wa Nishati wa Tanzania, ili aweze kutoa neno la utangulizi. Mheshimiwa Waziri, tafadhali.
Mheshimiwa Rais Samia Suluhu Hassan, Rais wa Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania. Mheshimiwa Rais Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, Rais wa Jamhuri ya Uganda. Mheshimiwa Kassim Majaliwa, Waziri Mkuu wa Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania. Waheshimiwa mawaziri wa pande zote wa serikali zote mbili ya Tanzania na Uganda na viongozi mbalimbali wa serikali, wafanyabiashara kutoka Uganda na Tanzania. Mheshimiwa Rais, ninayo heshima kubwa kusimama hapa mbele yenu viongozi wangu pamoja na washiriki wa kongamano hili. Naanza kama ilivyo ada kumshukuru Mwenyezi Mungu kwa kibali chake kilichotuwezesha kukutana hapa siku ya leo. Ninayo heshima kubwa kwa niaba yako Mheshimiwa Rais kuwakaribisha washiriki wote katika makazi haya yako. Tunakushukuru kwa ukarimu wako wa kutukaribisha hapa. Tumekutana hapa siku ya leo kuhitimisha kongamano muhimu la sekta binafsi za nchi zetu mbili kuhusu masuala muhimu katika mradi wa kusafirisha mafuta ghafi kutoka Uganda. Katika kongamano hili tumejadiliana la sekta binafsi, yamejadiliwa mambo muhimu na ya msingi ambayo yatapelekea sekta binafsi na wananchi kwa ujumla katika nchi hizi mbili kunufaika. Mheshimiwa Rais, wawakilishi wa sekta binafsi watayabainisha masuala hayo kwa kina watakapokuja kuzungumza hapa punde kidogo. Lakini ninayo furaha kuripoti kwamba kongamano hili ambalo tulizindua jana mimi na waziri mwenzangu Dr. Ruth Nankabirwa, waziri wa nishati na maendeleo ya madini kutoka Uganda, liliendeshwa vizuri katika mazingira ya uwazi, katika mazingira ya urafiki na katika dhamira ya mashirikiano. Mheshimiwa Rais, katika mwenendo wa kongamano lililoanza jana, tumeona mwanga mpya wa mashirikiano ya sekta binafsi ya nchi hizi mbili kuliko spiriti ya ushindani ambayo kwa kawaida inaonyeshwa na wafanyabiashara. Jambo hili ni la kutia moyo na tunaamini kwamba litaendelea. Mheshimiwa Rais, tuko hapa kwanza kwa kudra za Mwenyezi Mungu kuamua kuyaweka mafuta chini ya ardhi ya ndugu zetu wa Uganda. Lakini pia tuko hapa kutokana na ujasiri wa uongozi wa Rais Yoweri Kaguta Museveni kuamua kuyachimba mafuta hayo na kujenga uwezo wa vijana wa Uganda kuifanya kazi hiyo, na kuifanya kazi hiyo kwa namna ambayo inatoa manufaa sio tu kwa wananchi wa Uganda bali hata kwa ndugu zao wa Tanzania. Kwa hiyo tunampongeza sana Mheshimiwa Rais Museveni. Lakini pia tuko hapa kutokana na ujasiri wa uongozi wa marehemu Rais John Pombe Magufuli, ambaye kwa kushirikiana na Rais Museveni waliamua kwamba safari ya kuyapeleka mafuta hayo kwenye masoko ya dunia yapitie katika ardhi yetu na katika bandari yetu. Tunampongeza Rais Museveni na tunampongeza na kumwombea kwa Mwenyezi Mungu Rais wetu marehemu Dr. John Pombe Magufuli kwa kazi aliyoifanya ambayo imewezesha tuwe hapa siku ya leo. Vile vile tupo hapa Mheshimiwa Marais kutokana pia na ujasiri wa uongozi wako Mheshimiwa Rais wetu Samia Suluhu Hassan kuhakikisha kwamba kazi hii inaendelea, mikataba inasainiwa na wananchi wananufaika na fursa zinazotokana na mradi huu. Mheshimiwa Rais, kongamano hili ni matokeo ya maelekezo yako kwetu kwamba tufanye jitihada zote kuwaelimisha wananchi wa nchi zetu mbili kuhusu mradi wenyewe, fursa zilizopo na namna ya kuzifikia na kunufaika nazo. Pia Mheshimiwa Rais, ulituelekeza kwamba tuvitambue vikwazo vilivyopo katika kufikia na kunufaika na fursa hizi. Kazi hii tumeifanya na kongamano hili ni matokeo ya maelekezo hayo kwetu. Mheshimiwa Rais, Waheshimiwa Marais, sio adabu kuongea kwa kirefu mbele ya viongozi wako. Kwa hiyo naomba nifupishe, lakini naomba mniruhusu nizungumze jambo moja muhimu la ushirikiano wa sekta ya nishati kati ya nchi zetu mbili. Mheshimiwa Marais, baada ya shughuli ya leo, mimi na mwenzangu Waziri wa Nishati na Maendeleo ya Madini wa Uganda Dr. Ruth Nankabirwa tutafanya kikao pamoja na wataalamu wetu kuendelea kusisitiza kuangalia namna ambavyo tunaweza kushirikiana kwa karibu zaidi katika nchi zetu mbili kuhakikisha kwamba mradi huu unafanikiwa. Lakini pia tutazungumza kuhusu mradi mwingine mpya ambao Mheshimiwa Rais ulituelekeza tuangalie, na wenyewe ni wa kujenga bomba jingine la kutoa gesi Tanzania kupeleka Uganda. Leo tutaanza mazungumzo ya awali kuhusu swala hilo, na kutokana na uongozi wenu na dhamira yenu ya kuimarisha mahusiano kati ya nchi zetu mbili, lakini na kuhakikisha kwamba rasilimali asili zilizopo katika nchi zetu pia zinanufaisha majirani zetu na zinawezesha uchumi wa ukanda huu kukua kwa pamoja. Kazi hiyo tutaifanya katika mkutano ambao tutakutana baadaye. Mheshimiwa Rais, Waheshimiwa Rais, pia nimalize kwa kukupongeza Mheshimiwa Rais Samia Suluhu Hassan pia kwa ujasiri wako wa uongozi wa kutuelekeza kwamba mradi mkubwa wa kuchakata gesi nyingi iliyopo baharini ili kuisafirisha katika masoko ya dunia na kuitumia katika nchi yetu na katika ukanda huu tuifanye na tuimalize. Kazi hiyo tumeianza, mazungumzo yanaendelea vizuri na tutafika mahala ambapo ndani ya kipindi kifupi tutatoa taarifa kuhusu maendeleo ya kazi hiyo. Imani yetu ni kwamba mara baada ya kukamilika kwa mradi huu, ukichanganya na mradi huu wa bomba la mafuta, basi ramani ya Afrika Mashariki kwenye sekta ya nishati duniani itabadilika. Jana tulizungumza Mheshimiwa Rais kwamba ukitazama ramani, nchi zetu zimegawanywa kwa mipaka iliyochorwa, lakini ramani ya siku zijazo haitakuwa ya mipaka baina ya nchi, bali itakuwa ya mistari inayoziunganisha nchi, na mistari hiyo ni ya barabara, ya laini za umeme na kweli ya mabomba ya nishati. Kwa hiyo Mheshimiwa Rais, Mheshimiwa Rais, nchi zetu mbili zinachora ramani mpya duniani ya kuziunganisha na kuwawezesha wananchi wetu na nchi zetu kuendelea kwa haraka zaidi na kupata manufaa makubwa zaidi. Kwa hiyo kwa heshima na taadhima, naomba niishie hapa. Nawashukuru sana kwa kunisikiliza. Asanteni sana.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Januari Makamba, Waziri wa Nishati. Naomba tumpigie makofi tena. Mheshimiwa Rais, kwa ridhaa yenu sasa naomba nimkaribishe Mheshimiwa Ruthi Nankabirwa, Waziri wa Nishati na Madini wa Jamhuri ya Uganda. Karibu Mheshimiwa Waziri.
Your Excellency Samia Suluhu Hassan, the President of the United Republic of Tanzania, Your Excellency General Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, the President of the Republic of Uganda, Excellencies, my colleagues, ministers, distinguished members from the government of the Republic of Tanzania, the chief executives of oil companies, heads of government agencies, members of the private sector, ladies and gentlemen, good morning to you all. I will not endeavor to speak in Swahili for obvious reasons, coming from Uganda. Your Excellency, I would like to thank you so much for hosting us. And I want to thank you for the hospitality that we have enjoyed since we arrived in this beautiful country. Thank you so much. I am honored to address you this morning, and I just want to inform you, Your Excellencies, that the symposium started yesterday and that we were able to take the private sector through the journey of commercialization of our petroleum. And I was so pleased to hear my colleague, Honorable Januari Makamba, appreciating you, Your Excellency, President of Uganda, for the patience that you put in since the discovery, the strategic plan that you did to make sure that you build a human resource that will be able to put the eye on the ground so that the people of Uganda, the people of Tanzania benefit from this natural resource. Since yesterday, we had a panel of people from Uganda, the Petroleum Authority of Uganda, which is in charge of making sure that local content is followed. We have the permanent secretary from the Ministry of Energy. We have private sector foundation leaders from Uganda. They were able to appreciate the stage at which we are, especially where activities have started from the two sites. Tilenga, where they are constructing the central processing facility, which is going to process 190,000 barrels per day of crude oil. Kingfisher, which is expected to process 40,000 barrels per day. And all that is very important. The crude oil pipeline will see about 200,000 barrels every day coming to Tanzania. I want to take this opportunity to thank you, Your Excellency, the President of the Republic of Tanzania, that you have been following up and that you are ready with your legislation the implementation legislation, which is very key, which investors have been waiting for so that we can see contracting in its true sense. I want to assure you that in Uganda, more specifically on Tuesday, we are going to conclude the East African Crude Oil Pipeline Bill through Parliament. That has been waited for. Your Excellencies, after that, we are going to see a lot of activities. Therefore, what we have been informing investors is to make sure that they make joint ventures, because this facilitates for both of us. A Ugandan company here in Tanzania is not a foreign company. A Tanzanian company down in Uganda is not considered a foreign company. Both are local content companies. We need to help one another to build our capacities. So we are here using this symposium to interface, to network, and come up with a deal that will benefit the people of Uganda and the people of Tanzania. And that is what we are expecting. I want to thank the High Commissioners, one of Uganda to Tanzania, and Tanzania to Uganda, and the other sponsors who have been organizing and we've been able to come and interface. This is a very important symposium, and I wish to say that we need to organize many more. Otherwise, there are so many people who are expected to reap where they did not even sow. So our presidents have put in a lot of efforts. We should not let them down by not being prepared. What the gathering is waiting for, Your Excellencies, are the words of wisdom from both of you. The commitment, the assurances that the peace and security and stability of Tanzania and Uganda will continue. This is what the private sector would like to hear, so that they can invest in knowingly that they will not be interrupted. I would therefore not like to waste a lot of time, but to stop here and thank you so much for the opportunity and pledge my commitment in working with my brother and brothers and sisters from Tanzania to make sure that we don't let you down, to make sure that we don't injure the long relationship that the two countries have built for a long time, for God and my country. Thank you very much.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Aruthi Nankabirwa. Naomba tumpigie tena makofi. Mheshimiwa Rais, kwa ridhaa yenu sasa naomba nimkaribishe Bwana Patrick Mweheire, mwenyekiti wa chemba ya madini na petroli kutoka nchini Uganda, ili aweze kufanya summary ama kwa kifupi kile ambacho jana waliweza kujadiliana katika mkutano wao huu au kongamano la jana. Karibu sana.
Your Excellency Samia Suluhu Hassan, the President of the United Republic of Tanzania, Your Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, President of the Republic of Uganda, Ministers, Permanent Secretaries, Ambassadors, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Patrick Mweheire. I am the current chair of Uganda's Chamber of Mines and Petroleum, but my day job is the Regional Chief Executive for Stanbic Bank, looking after 6 countries: Tanzania, Kenya, Uganda, Ethiopia, Malawi, and South Sudan. So I have a very regional perspective. First of all, I wanted to thank you both, Your Excellencies, for your leadership and clarity of the importance of regional cooperation. It inspires greatly when the executive branch, such as yourself, shows the foresight and vision and paves the way for the private sector to grow. And indeed, in our oil and gas deliberations, we had lots to be thankful for. You delivered the legal and regulatory framework for this to happen. You signed a number of landmark agreements, HGA, tariff and transportation agreement, land acquisition. You could go on and on. But it's clear that your determination and clarity on the bigger picture got us this far. Two sovereign nations negotiating such complex issues in a new industry brings a lot of complexities. Over the years, Your Excellency, I have been involved in several companies negotiating to merge or acquire stakes in each other. And it's taken months and years and frustrations and lots of meetings to get some of those transactions done. And most cases, a lot of these, what I would call experienced business professionals, struggle as they approach negotiations as a zero-sum game. You win, I lose, which is completely unuseful. I think you took a massive and very brave approach that this was not a zero-sum game, it was a win-win, and that's how we ended up here. You saw what $30 billion of investment would do for the region. Now that you've given me a few minutes, allow me to update you on our deliberations over the last day or so. There were key challenges that came up. There are three main ones. One was financing, both the depth of it and the size of it. Banks in both countries, if we were asked to commit to one transaction, would only be able to raise about $1 billion of financing. And the ask in this sector for now is $30 billion. So you can see there's a huge gap. So we challenged ourselves, if we're limited to our balance sheet capacities, what can we do with the little that we have? Can we be a little bit more innovative and smarter in how we use the money that we have? And I'll share a little bit more of that later. The second challenge that we faced was clearly the local enterprises' skill gap, information asymmetry, and lack of market access. So financing was one. The other was the local enterprises. Not only were they not ready, many cases, they do not have the information to be successful. It's clear that our enterprises lack the survivability, and this complex oil and gas industry will not lower its standards. They're already facing a lot of pressure under ESG, and compliance is only going to get harder. So how do we bring the standards of our local enterprises up? We shared a number of examples, like for example in Uganda, where we launched a Stanbic incubator that has trained 2,000 SMEs over the last 3 years. And we have real testimonies, Your Excellencies, that if you point out the gaps and help and put out a lending hand to help, these SMEs listen. And a 3-month intervention on a key skilling can make a difference in whether an SME survives an extra 3 to 5 years. From the harrowing statistic that I'm not proud to share, but in Uganda, a very entrepreneurial country, only about 70% of SMEs make it past their 3rd anniversaries. They do eventually go and do other things, so they continue to be entrepreneurial, but that's not the point. How do we allow these enterprises to last for a decade and more? So that was the other issue that we discussed. The third and last one was, how do we harmonize on regional requirements, whether it's contracts, local ownership, security or collateral, information asymmetry? Your Excellencies, the same journey that you and your technical teams traveled in understanding the context of the laws of the land of the different countries, what was important and what was not, we in the private sector have to take the same journey. To be considered a Tanzanian company, you need a 25% local ownership. Uganda took a different route and focused more on the aggregate ring fencing. And no one is saying one is right and one is wrong. But the challenge is that if we're looking for seamless or borderless investment, which you both mentioned in your remarks last evening, we will need your guidance and leadership on this. Particularly in this 3-year window, when we are trying to allow for symbiotic transfer of skills and capital across our countries. Could you take a 3-year window where some of these barriers could be lifted to allow these East African businesses to integrate and ultimately build on our trade? Because it does take time to change laws, and we acknowledge that. But we have a 3 to 5 year window to absorb this $30 billion of investment. So we not have a lot of time. For the larger ticket items like E-Corp, refinery, we acknowledge the need for external capital. And we know there's no shortage of capital in the world, given the low interest rate environment that we've been in since the crisis of 2008. Quantitative easing has created such massive liquidity in the Western world. And with interest rates at close to zero, pensioners who are living way into their 90s are worried about their livelihoods. So how can we boost those monthly pension checks in the West while we get them to fund our growth? We do have incredibly attractive investment opportunities. The Ugandan refinery was showing 17% after-tax USD return. There is a small, I wouldn't call it small, there's a fund in California, it's called the California Teachers Pension Fund. They are sitting on $444 billion worth of assets. If we're able to convince them even just to move 1% of that, or $4 billion to East Africa, it would be a game changer. And that's 4 times X of what the banks are able to do. The reality is we're at a crossroads where we're investing significantly. In Uganda's case, we're investing 50% of GDP, 15 billion out of the 30 billion in the 3 years. So it is unrealistic to expect that we can self-fund that. I will say that in order to attract this capital, there are some structural problems on both sides that we need to fix. I could spend half an hour talking about those problems, but I would say just 2 things. On the Western side, I think there's a whole misconception about real versus perceived risks. They, I think, put such a huge risk premium on Africa, which is not warranted. I would argue that investing in Venezuela is 10 times riskier than investing in Tanzania. But they don't view it that way because of the proximity and the history that they've worked together. On our end, they've often argued that we don't have the depth or the market size. I think you've solved the market size. I mean, a $30 billion opportunity is large in any measure. But we need to start working on the depth and open those channels of communications. We need to get the context and talk to our stories. We did talk about on the smaller ticket financing, which is to the SMEs, how can we help them reduce the red tape? On that, we agreed that now we should start having both the contractor, such as a Total, in the same room with a smaller enterprise, and we negotiate how to de-risk the risk of the smaller enterprise. And there are many, many innovative ways you can do that, using escrow accounts where we see the contract money before you pay the SME, and just bring the risk down to the larger enterprise and allow the SME to do business at a much lower interest rate. We need to be more flexible. We need to come up with products that are more localized, that do not require security. We have listened and we've committed to put our best foot forward. As a regional bank, I have asked my team, because in some ways we're aligned in my goal. My goal is to build a regional bank and not to have 6 independent banks. So I've been tasking my teams on how we can move collateral across borders. Could we take Tanzanian collateral for a Ugandan transaction and the vice versa? Then lastly, on the issues of skills gap and uplifting of SMEs, we're committed to bringing some of the best practices that we've seen that have worked, create portals of information to kill the information asymmetry, create linkages for market access so they can sell their products by bringing in some of these large corporates and introducing them to them. Only when we support the lifelines of these SMEs, which create 70% of jobs in our region, can we see a real trickle-down effect on impact and change. You ring-fence services, but now we need to capacity build so that we match those services to ensure that we extract a minimum of 30% of the spend, which is about 30 billion, over the next 3 to 5 years. Private sector coordinating with the public sector to ensure this works is key. In conclusion, Your Excellencies, we are at a critical juncture. The executive branch and the public sector, through your leadership, has displayed great courage. You are leading the baton, you're handing over the baton to the local private sector to harness these opportunities, and we welcome that challenge. Our request is that we view these next 3-5 years as a transition period that will require a lot of agility. Please keep your communication lines open for us. The multiplier effect of a dollar investment into a local company versus going into a foreign company cannot be overstated. Let's keep this as our true north theme and work tirelessly to make our local institutions scale and build sustainability. Thank you so much for all you've done so far, and we're committed to do the rest. Thank you for listening.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Patrick Wehere kwa maelezo hayo. Mheshimiwa Rais, kwa ridhaa yenu sasa naomba nimkaribishe Bi Angelina Ngalula, mwenyekiti wa taasisi ya sekta binafsi hapa nchini, ili naye aweze kueleza yale waliokubaliana na yatokanayo na kikao chao. Karibu.
Your Excellency Samia Suluhu Hassan, President of the United Republic of Tanzania, Your Excellency Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, President of the Republic of Uganda, Honorable Kassim Majaliwa, Prime Minister of the United Republic of Tanzania, Honorable January Makamba, Minister of Energy for Tanzania, Honorable Ruthi Nankabirwa, Minister of Energy and Mineral Development for Uganda, Honorable Ministers, Deputy Ministers, Permanent Secretaries present here today from Tanzania and Uganda, High Commissioners, Honorable Amos Makara, Regional Commissioner for Dar es Salaam, Head of Government Institutions from both countries, Patrick Mweheire, Chairman of Uganda Chamber of Mines and Petroleum, members of the private sector from Tanzania and Uganda, members of the media, invited guests, members of the press, ladies and gentlemen, na wasalimu kwa jina la Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania na jina la Jamhuri ya Uganda. Your Excellencies, on behalf of the private sector in Tanzania, TPSF, and the Private Sector Foundation of Uganda, let me also extend a warm welcome to you all to this year Tanzania Oil and Gas Symposium 2021 with the theme of enhancing private sector participation in the oil and gas sector. We thank you very much for making time to be with us today. Despite your busy schedule, your presence here today is a strong indication that the spirit of East African cooperation is alive and thriving. Karibuni sana. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, yesterday, the 27th of November, our two business communities held a very fruitful discussion under the theme of enhancing private sector participation in the oil and gas sector. The objective of this symposium were to provide a platform for networking, learning and sharing experiences and opportunities within the oil and gas industry projects. It was also an opportunity to identify key strategies that can enable partnership and joint venture between Ugandan and Tanzanian private sector actors to facilitate public-private sector dialogue on issues that affect the implementation of local content in the oil and gas industry projects. I wish to thank you, all participants, for their effective participation and constructive contribution in the symposium. Your Excellencies, my role today is to highlight key areas which were identified at the symposium. Please allow me to mention 8 key areas of focus as the outcome of yesterday's symposium. Your Excellencies, the first focus area is private sector collaboration. The private sector collaboration is key to reap the benefits of this project. The emphasis from yesterday's meeting was to ask large local companies that will be awarded different tenders from the project to collaborate and work with SMEs, small and medium enterprises, across the different sectors and create opportunities along the value chains. For example, a company that will be awarded a tender to supply food to the project should create an agri-value chain for agri-processor and small farmers along the corridor. Your Excellencies, the second key focus is for the private sector in Tanzania and the private sector in Uganda to collaborate and work with members in ensuring adequate training on standard and HSE, health, safety, and environment management. Companies participating in this project and other future projects to put emphasis and investment in ensuring they acquire necessary international certifications required for this project. And as an apex bodies, we will ensure that we facilitate such training for the benefit of the private sector to be internationally competitive. Your Excellencies, the third key focus area is public and private collaboration on the core services in this project. The private sector should collaborate with key government institutions such as Tanzania Port Authority, Tanzania Railway Corporation, Uganda Railway Corporation, Marine Services, and others on areas that private sector can participate and work together with public institutions in providing specialized equipment for lifting, additional rolling stocks, and specialized wagon for carrying 18 meters pipes for the project. Your Excellencies, the fourth key focus area is on the awareness of the project opportunities. There are many opportunities on all aspects of the project in various sectors. Awareness about these opportunities at grassroots level is key in particular project area. TPSF and PSFU, in collaboration with other stakeholders, will work with relevant clusters to develop and lead awareness campaign along project areas. Your Excellencies, the fifth key focus area is the awareness of joint venture opportunities between Tanzania and Uganda with large, medium, and small enterprises. Capital skills and technology transfer are key. This may not be available in some entities, but may be available through joint ventures. Your Excellencies, the sixth key focus area is compliance capacity on project standards and requirements. Competence and quality are key to accessing the project opportunities, in particular for SMEs, as most of the SMEs lack the capacity to project standard and requirement. PSO, capacity building initiative, and those of other training institutions must be geared to building the capacity of registered vendor, suppliers to meet project standards and compliance requirements. Your Excellencies, the seventh key focus area is skills. There is skill mismatch, mainly among our youth, losing most of their employment opportunity to foreigners. Our universities and education institutions should work with private sector to understand skills that are required for this project and other projects, and to be able to empower graduates with employability skills. Your Excellencies, the 8th focus area is access to affordable finance for SMEs, which my colleague had already spoken about it. This is key to facilitate participation in available project opportunity. We encourage banks to develop affordable SMEs products along the ring-fenced goods and services identified in the host government agreements. Your Excellencies, we recognize that some of challenges are beyond private sector ability to address them. These are mainly regulatory in nature, and they include the inclusivity of private sector, pre-contract negotiation and during negotiations. This will enable sufficient preparation of the private sector in terms of training, finance, and infrastructure investment. Another area that the private sector would ask for government intervention is on mutual recognition agreements, MRA. It has been agreed but not yet been ratified by member countries, and this has been a hurdle for movement of professional services between our two countries. We kindly request our government to make headway and ratify these agreements. Another area that private sector would request for government intervention is on harmonization of fiscal and regulatory regime. The project is one across two countries, but tax regimes are different. We argue alignment on the tax regime, in particular of goods and services, and movement of people to avoid double taxation. Another area that the private sector would request for government intervention is on alignment of the local content. For example, in Uganda, local content is defined as a domestic value addition, while in Tanzania, it is defined in terms of local ownership. The private sector advised the government to harmonize the definition of local content on the two countries. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, this is the time for action. We have had several ECOP meetings, private to private, public to public, public to private. It is now time to move for action. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let me again thank Your Excellencies for making time to attend and your commitment to the success of this project for the benefit of our people in the region. A special thanks to the private sector of Uganda for giving us the opportunity to host this event in Tanzania, and I thank all sponsors without whom this event would not be possible. Your Excellencies, as we are descending towards the end of the year, I wish to take this opportunity on behalf of the Tanzania private sector and Uganda private sector to wish you a Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Asanteni sana, kazi iendelee.
Asante sana, naomba tumpigie makofi mengine mwenyekiti wa sekta binafsi hapa nchini Bi Angelina kwa kwa maelezo hayo. Mheshimiwa Rais, sasa kwa heshima na taadhima, naomba nimwombe Mheshimiwa Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, Rais wa Jamhuri ya Uganda, ili naye aweze kutoa hotuba yake katika hafla hii ya ufungaji wa kongamano la wafanyabiashara wa Tanzania na Uganda. Mheshimiwa Rais, nakuomba tafadhali uelekee katika eneo la kuzungumza. Asante.
Mheshimiwa Samia Suluhu Hassan, Rais wa Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania, Mheshimiwa Waziri Mkuu, mawaziri, wafanyabiashara na watu wengine walikwa. When I was told that I was going to speak to business people, I prepared a speech for business. Then later on I was told to say, no, you are going to speak on oil. Oh, so I was wondering how to do it. But last night I asked permission from Her Excellency. She said, wewe sema maneno yako yote. Kwa hiyo namshukuru. But now, my decision to prepare a comprehensive talk has been strengthened by the confusion of my son, the one who was here. Mweheire, the one who was speaking, the one of the Stambik. Oh, he's very worried about this, about that. And I know why he's worried. Because his bank is always confusing. Because, anyway, let me go on with my speech. Your Excellency, the challenge before Africa today is an old one. It is the challenge that has faced man for the last 4.5 million years, since man evolved from the lower primates to the Homo sapiens sapiens species with a superior brain, walking on 2 legs, and with a hand that can hold tools and do work. Since that time, man has been oppressed by the two phenomena: oppression by nature and oppression by fellow man. The latter phenomenon included oppression in the form of slavery, feudalism, colonialism, dictatorships, etc. The former included suffering from diseases, drought, hunger, floods, pests, etc. However, man, being the wise mammal he had become since 4.5 million years ago, he has been using his superior brain and his work-capable hands to find solutions to those oppressive phenomena. Starting with oppression by nature, man has been using 3 tools to ameliorate the situations. These have been science and technology, philosophy, and strategy. Science and technology meant understanding the laws of nature, such as gravity, pressure, magnetism, electricity, etc., and using them to solve his problems. Philosophy involves the understanding of man and his behavior, and on the side of economics, understanding what stimuli can make him work most devotedly or otherwise. The strategy involves arrangements that can assist or inhibit man in his efforts to create wealth and overcome poverty. Man everywhere has been making progress on the front of combating oppression by nature, but at different paces. Some zones of the world moving faster than others on account of some identifiable reasons. 1.5 million years ago, man invented fire. Fire enabled man to solve so many problems: to cook, to roast, to fry, to light, to warm oneself, etc. This enabled man to go from trees and start living in caves, which were more comfortable than the former, because he could now warm the caves, which were too cold for human habitation, and expel the darkness from the caves. 10,000 years ago, he started domesticating crops. And between 8,000 BC and 2,500 BC, he started domesticating animals, livestock. In terms of philosophy, societal ideas evolved from metaphysics, predestination, and so on, to the understanding of man's ability to influence his destiny by working. Meanwhile, especially in Europe, society was evolving. As Karl Marx pointed out, by the time he wrote in 1848, society had gone through 4 social systems of the primitive society, the slave state, feudalism, and capitalism, and was at that time entering the era of socialism and communism. The best crucible of understanding this phenomena of social evolution is the onset of the French Revolution in 1789. By this time, France, and maybe other parts of Europe, was a 4-class society, which were the feudalists or the aristocrats that lived on rent from land, the peasants that were serfs on the land owned by the feudalists and had to surrender a part of their harvest to the landlords, the new class of the middle class, the bourgeoisie, and that's what Muhiri should understand. I didn't know that it's God who told me to write this way. That lived on profits, the difference between the cost of inputs and the production of a good or a service and the price of the final product. These were manufacturers, traders, service providers, etc. And also the new class of the working class, the proletariat, who no longer owned anything except their labor, which they sold to the bourgeoisie in return for wages. This is how you, the businessmen, come on the scene. You are a historical phenomenon. because this is what developed Europe. Europe was changed by the middle class. All these other people were there, feudalists, kings, what have you, they were there, the Pope, they were there. But the new force in Europe, which made Europe go ahead and we stay where we are now, was the middle class. And that's why I was very happy. Oh, let me talk to the middle class. I was very happy. But then they said, no, you only talk about oil. I said, no, I can't talk about oil, because oil is just a small thing. The middle class is much bigger, as you will see in my argument. This new class, the bourgeoisie, caused a lot of changes in the world, good and evil. On the side of evil, you have imperialism. That was by the middle class. Imperialism. The slave trade. Nani walikuwa wanauza watumwa? Ni wale wale. Which was part of what they call primitive accumulation of capital. Genocide, etc. However, on the positive side, the middle class, being interested in profits, apart from looking for raw materials, they also needed markets. Markets. Middle class, markets. When you produce, where do you sell? This is the biggest problem of the middle class in Africa. How can you produce if you are not sure of the market? The more buyers you get, the better the business. That is how the bourgeoisie in France propelled the anti-feudal revolution of 1789, which included the de facto balkanization of France. Although France had been one kingdom for a long time, ever since 842 AD, there were nevertheless internal fiefdoms. Although France was one kingdom for a long time, but there were internal provinces. You couldn't go from one province to the other province without tax, without paying tax. Internally, within France, although it was one kingdom, but there were internal taxes called tile or something like that in Spanish, in French, T-A-I-L-L-E, on goods being traded in the form of inter-province trade. This, of course, disadvantaged trade so much. Who was benefiting from these taxes? The answer, the feudal lords. At whose expense? The answer is at the expense of the bourgeoisie, the middle class, and the French people in general, because those taxes made goods more expensive, slowed down the rate of growth of the companies, which affected their ability to create jobs, and also slowed down the rate of growth of those companies in expanding the tax base. So, if the companies don't sell, they don't expand. If they don't, if they sell but not enough, and if they don't expand, how will they create jobs? And if they don't create jobs, then where will the government get taxes? Because the government must get taxes people who are working. When it came to the fragmented Germanic populations of what became Germany later, and the Latin populations of what became Italy later, because by this time, there was no united Germany. There was no united Italy. And I want to show you the role of the middle class, how they helped. The fragmented Germanic populations of what became Germany later, and the Latin populations of what became Italy later, you see again the role of the business interests working for the integration of those peoples and countries. It is the middle classes who worked for the unity of these countries, to unify those countries. That's why I was very happy to talk to you. Not just about oil and these small things. In the case of Germany, it had the big farmers known as the Junkers. It's written Junkers, but it's pronounced as the Junkers. In the German kingdom of Prussia, one of the 39 kingdoms into which the Germanic people were divided, that pushed for the unification of Germany. By 1870, Germany was divided into 39 kingdoms. It is the business classes who said, we want to unite this market, who caused the unity of Germany. That effort was achieved in 1870, following the Franco-Prussian War of 1870. The unification of Italy was not one country until 1860, following efforts by people like Henry Cavour of Piedmont and Garibaldi. Earlier, in 1776, the British American colonies, again led by business interests, had liberated themselves from the rule of the British King George III. Their slogan, when they poured British tea in the sea at Boston, was, "No taxation without representation." Again, a middle-class demand. The leaders of this movement, George Washington and others, correctly decided to unite the 13 British colonies of New Hampshire, Massachusetts, Rhode Island, New Jersey, Connecticut, Delaware, Maryland, etc., into the nucleus of the United States. This one you say today, the one which people are worshiping now instead of worshiping God. They're worshiping the United States. That by 1945 had become the most powerful country in the world. This country, USA, was created long after our countries over here. Uganda, Buganda, Bunyoro, Rwanda, Mirambo, the chiefdoms of Karagwe, much older than the US. But now the US is much stronger. Why? Because it was started on new ideas of partly the middle class, the business class. Just next door, you had the older Spanish colonies of Latin America and Brazil that had belonged to Portugal. Instead of uniting, their leaders preferred balkanization, remaining fragmented. Today, with the help of television, you can see the different products of the two laboratories of history, one in North America and one in South America. In North America, you have power and prosperity. There are other internal challenges notwithstanding. In Latin America, you have weakness, poverty, insecurity, and desperation. You saw those people walking to the US. You have seen them on TV, those Latin American countries. Latin America is very rich in terms of natural resources. That's what I was saying last night. Mali asili sio biashara, natural resources. Natural resources are not business. They are not wealth. Latin America is very rich. A lot of water, a lot of forests, a lot of minerals, but people are very poor. Why? Because when you start a business in Honduras, it can't succeed. Honduras, El Salvador, Nicaragua, Panama. Huwezi kufaulu kibiashara in those fragmented markets. And one of the reasons, of course there are other reasons, but one of the reasons is you don't have enough market. You don't have enough market. In North America, you have power and prosperity. There are other internal challenges notwithstanding. In Latin America, you have weakness, poverty, insecurity, and desperation. You have seen on television thousands of desperate people walking on foot for thousands of miles, going to the success story of history, the USA, from the failed experiment of history of Latin America. The laboratories, the two laboratories are there. One laboratory, the US. The other one, Latin America. When it therefore comes to Africa, particularly East Africa, we cannot say that we are short of examples of what needs to be done in the last 500 years of the long human history. The question is, if you do not ensure the availability of some factors, including the availability of a large market, how will business grow? Secondly, the question is, if business does not grow, how will you create jobs? How will you ensure the production of goods and services that you need to import substitution and also for export promotion? How will you expand the tax base to get enough money for the government to provide adequate services to the people, including the building of the infrastructure itself? How will you solve this? If business doesn't grow, how will you solve all those problems? By 1986, when the NRM took power after an armed conflict of 20 years, 1966 to 86, the economy of Uganda had collapsed and had been totally informalized. Colonialism and the immediate post-colonial years had seen the emergence of a small enclave, that's Ironeno, enclave economy. That's what we were using in the university in the 1960s. By that time, we had diagnosed this problem. And that's what Yoweri is talking about. He's talking about an enclave economy. Enclave economy of modernity, a small island of modernity, surrounded by a sea of backwardness. The writers of that time were describing that small economy as the economy of the 3 C's and 3 T's. The three C's were cotton, coffee, and copper. That was Uganda in the 1940s, 50s, and so on. 3 C's: coffee, cotton, copper. And 3 T's: tobacco, tea, and tourism. That's how they were describing our small island of mambo ya kisasa imezungukwa na hali ya duni. Villagers without income, without what? Wamezunguka katika island katika ziwa ka modernity. Electricity, simu, some these were copper, cotton, and cotton. It was only by 1986, 2 of the 3 C's had totally collapsed. These were copper and cotton. It was only coffee that was still limping on with the export of 2 million bags per annum of 60 kilograms each. Except for tobacco, the other 2 T's had either disappeared completely, e.g. tourism, or shrunk greatly, e.g. tea, which had gone from 23 million kilograms to only 3 million. The word enclave means island, and the enclave economy therefore means an island of modernity surrounded by a sea of backwardness, e.g. peasants only working for the stomach, that some people call subsistence farming. The good luck for Uganda was that what became the NRM party was initially a student movement in the 1960s, some of them active here in Uganda. Tissue. During that long period, tissue. During that long period, we had time to study and also see in practice the impacts of efforts. During that long time, we had time to study and also see in practice the impact of efforts for socio-economic transformation, positive and negative, by the different policy stimuli or disstimuli, if we can coin such a word. On account of that, especially our decision to encourage the private sector in Uganda, including bringing back the Indians who Idi Amin, in his ignorance, had expelled, being socialists notwithstanding, has enabled the economy of Uganda to grow at the rate of 6.5% per annum for the last 35 years. The economy could have grown much faster if it was not for the opportunists among us, the careerists, and the corrupt among us. This limited growth has transformed Uganda from a land into a land of surpluses, while in 1986 it was a land of shortages. We had shortages of sugar, salt, soap, textiles, paraffin, etc. The whole economy had been informalized into a magendo, speculation, black market, and shortages economy. It is now the opposite. Everything is in surplus: sugar, milk, maize, bananas, soap, other industrial products such as cement, steel bars, cooking oil, etc. The problem is the market. In order for these businesses to continue growing, we must access more of the internal market by the population acquiring more purchasing power, because part of the problem is that the people don't have money in their pockets, so they don't buy. That's one problem. The goods are there, but they don't buy enough. And also our manufacturers deepening the industrialization process. Although we say we have surplus milk today, our production having grown from 200 million liters in 1986 to now 2.8 billion liters, it is on account of Ugandans drinking only 60 liters of milk per person per annum. If they were drinking the recommended 210 liters per person per annum, Uganda, with its 43 million people, would need today 9 billion liters of milk per year. We are now crying, maziwa yamezidi, maziwa yamezidi. Maziwa yako wapi? 2.8 billion. But why? The Ugandans are not drinking enough. They are drinking only 60 liters per person per year, while WHO is recommending 210 liters to make sure that you have teeth in your mouth. Your bones don't break. Mifupa imepasuka kwa sababu huna calcium ya kutosha. So although we are now fighting with Tanzania, buy our milk. We have excess milk. Tanzania buy, Kenya buy, Rwanda, but actually the internal market is still there, but it is dormant. Why? Because they don't have money in their pocket. Why? That's another story. Hence, the question of oversupply would not arise apart from the purchasing power, there is the issue of deepening industrialization. Ugandans have been crying with the issue of sugar. Tumekuwa tunagombana na jirani zetu juu ya sukari. Majirani wamekataa kuchukua sukari yetu. Marehemu bought some 20,000 from us, and the Kenyans have been buying, but there is still a surplus. But you will see that it is also an artificial surplus. Ugandans have been crying with the issue of surplus sugar and surplus sugar cane in some parts of Uganda. Why? It is because Ugandans presently consume 380,000 tons of sugar per annum, while our production is currently 550,000 per annum. This is, however, sugar for chai only. Hii ndio wanazungumzia. Wanasema wameendelea sana, wako na sukari ya chai. How about industrial sugar for use by Coca-Cola, for pharmaceutical industries, like children's syrups? You know, the children, when you give them medicine, you don't give them the one which is bitter. You give them syrups. That is from sugar. Lakini hawa Waganda hawajatengeneza hiyo sukari. Sukari wanazungumzia ni ile ya chai peke yake. How about industrial sugar for use by Coca-Cola and for pharmaceutical industries? That was none of the business of either either the planners in the Ministry of Finance. Our planners also, sijui hapa Tanzania, lakini kule kwetu, these planners in the ministries, that was none of the business of either the planners in the Ministry of Finance and Planning, and also unplanning. I think they should also add the word. They should add the Ministry of Finance and Planning and unplanning. That will be more accurate. Because if you are planning, why don't you see this? Kama sukari ya chai imeongezeka, na pale jirani kuna kiwanda cha Coca-Cola which is importing industrial sugar. Why don't you plan? Say, and you don't have, the government doesn't have to do it. You just get a private sector person, you support him, and he does what you want. So that's simple. So so that's why I want to be more realistic and talk of Ministry of Finance and Planning and unplanning. Or even the business sector of Uganda. Consequently, while crying about surplus sugar, Uganda alone was importing 90,000 tons of industrial sugar. Hapa tunasema sukari imezidi. Upande ule, we are importing 90,000 tons of industrial sugar. In order to make 90,000 tons of industrial sugar, you need to refine 100,000 tons. Now, I don't know how much industrial sugar East Africa imports per annum. So, if Uganda, who have now some surplus sugar, go into industrial sugar, they will supply the Uganda market, but also maybe the East African market also. Then there is the region. So first of all, the internal market, strengthening it by more purchasing power, but also the deepening the industrialization. Then there is the regional market and the continental market. This is where you come in, you the business people. you really need to work with the political class to unequivocally support both the economic and the political integration of East Africa and Africa. Since 1963, I've been a follower of Mwalimu Julius Nyerere on the issue of the political federation of East Africa. My staff later on will give some newspaper which I had sent one to Marehemu. This was I had. They will give you a copy. That paper was 1963. On the 5th of June, 1963, and you will see it. A federated East Africa would create a united market for the businesses of 200 million people, who will be 401 million by 2050, according to the UN. The political federation would also make it easier to handle issues of insecurity, such as the insecurity in Eastern Congo, Somalia, Mozambique, which affects even the countries that are stable, because we have not and we cannot build wars between these sister countries. Moreover, East Africa is quite homogeneous around the language of Swahili, on top of the shared heritage of the Bantu, Nilotics, Nilo-Hamitic, and Cushitic peoples of this area. Last night, Her Excellency talked of Ntungamo of Biharamulo, I think, that area. But the district where I was born in Uganda is called Ntungamo, in Uganda. And it is from the verb kutungama, when you go up. I think Swahili would say kupanda. Lugha za kule kwetu, kupanda is kutungama. When you go down, is okushuma. I think that's how you have got to Rusumo. You know that Rusumo, the other one in Burundi, Rwanda there, Rusumo, when you are going down, okushuma, when you are going down. So, hawa ni watu wa, sisi ni watu wa moja. It is these similarities and ancient linkages that should enable East Africa to achieve maximum unity in the form of political federation and economic integration. Then we'll go to the CFTA, the Continental Trade Area. I do not agree with Muammar Gaddafi, nor with Nkrumah Osajefo, nor did Mwalimu, on the issue of one government for the whole of Africa. At the continental level, you do not have the same similarities like you have in respect to East Africa and Central Africa. You may even have some irreconcilable contradictions that would not permit the maximum level of integration. However, the common market of Africa is possible and desirable. It would give business a market of 1.4 billion people today that will grow to 2.5 billion by 2050. The two levels of integration, political and economic for East Africa, as well as economic for the whole of Africa, will create a bloc with which we can negotiate durable market access internationally with the USA, China, EU, Russia, India, Japan, Indonesia, etc. You remember the world is Mpankuwe. Give me so that I give you also. Reciprocity. Why all those efforts? Why do we, the freedom fighters, who have been following Mwalimu since the 1960s, why do we insist on this? Why do we continue talking about this. It is on account of our search for prosperity. If the African societies are going to be prosperity, how will they be prosperous? They can be prosperous through business. Business, what does business need? Market. How do you get the market? Create jobs, produce goods and services, a bigger government revenue, tax base, strategic security, strong armies that are able to ensure security and defend us against any and all enemies of whatever potential, taking advantage of our similarities, linkages, and a common history. In my view, this is part of the historical mission of the genuine business class of Africa. Otherwise, if we build a Latin America instead of a United States of America in Africa, we shall condemn our children to the sort of miseries you see in Latin America and even the Middle East, not to mention the harvest time for problems in Africa of today, Mali, Burkina Faso, Libya, Central African Republic, Somalia, Eastern Congo, Mozambique, etc. When we talk of business class, of the middle class, of the bourgeoisie, we should not forget that some of the middle class groups play a parasitic role in backward economies. China has within 70 years gone from being number 56 in the world in 1951 in the size of its economy to being number 2 today on account of the accuracy in analysis of its leaders of this issue of the middle class and also of other issues. Both Mao Zedong and Deng Xiaoping correctly disassembled the middle class into 4 types, if I remember correctly. When you say wafanya biashara, au wafanya biashara ni wa aina gani? Kwa sababu wafanya biashara wengine ni wazuri kwa afya ya economy ya uchumi wa nchi, wengine ni wabaya. These were the national bourgeoisie, the comprador bourgeoisie, the petty bourgeoisie, and the bureaucratic bourgeoisie. Of all these, the positive bourgeoisie were the national bourgeoisie, that part of the middle class that works to retain blood in Uganda and also to get blood from other countries, legitimately and equitably, to strengthen our economy. These are commercial farmers, manufacturers, service providers for activities that either substitute imports or promote exports. The bad elements are the comprador bourgeoisie, those who work for foreign interests in our economies in lines of business such as Ugandans could take up. These are mainly importers, commission agents, etc. A commission agent iko hapa kuuza bidhaa za wengine. How will he help our economy? The other dangerous group are the bureaucratic bourgeoisie, e.g. the civil servants. These are divorced from production, but are paid by the government and never bother to find out how the government gets the money, nor do they care about the rest of the citizens since they are paid whatever happens. The middle class we need are the national bourgeoisie, the commercial farmers, the manufacturers for imports and import substitution, export promotion, and service providers that either save or earn foreign exchange. Coming to the East African oil pipeline and the business opportunities it offers, I first declare that I have never been intoxicated by oil. Uganda discovered petroleum in 2006. It is now 15 years, but the oil has not been pumped out of the ground. Yet the economy of Uganda is growing. Japan is the 3rd richest country in the world, but it has no oil, no minerals, and no agriculture. It relies on the brains and the skills of its people. So is South Korea and even China. This is not to say that the oil of this region is not important. Oil has been important and will continue to be important. Oil transformed the very poor countries of North Africa and the Middle East into very affluent societies on account of the petrodollars that started flowing in that area following Gaddafi's activism for higher oil prices and the Arab-Israeli War of 1973. There is now awareness that some uses of petroleum generate gases that create a blanket effect in the atmosphere that warms the temperature of the globe, melts the ice sheet and the glaciers, and causes the seas to rise and unpredictable rain patterns. That, however, is not the fault of oil. It is the fault of the misusers. Uganda, therefore, supports the movement towards cleaner energy sources, hydro, solar, wind, geothermal, and even nuclear, and we are preparing for all. 2 points are, however, clear. First of all, we shall use fossil energy for another 40 years. So you don't have to worry that the oil is about to run out of demand, because, as I will show, there will always be demand for oil. In fact, although I'm never an opportunist, I cannot avoid not seeing an opportunity for some of us that have entered the nightclub when the notice for banning nightclubs was proclaimed. New nightclub goers will not book in, and hence we shall have the nightclubs to ourselves. You see, this campaign against oil is actually good for us, because many companies are fearing to invest in new oil ventures. But for us who are already there in the nightclub, since oil is still in demand, the price is now going up. I hear it has now gone to $83. Could this not be the reason for the price of oil going up? The climate salvation efforts are targeting correctly the use of coal for power generation and the internal combustion engines that should be replaced by electric engines. These are not the only uses of oil. There are safer uses of oil, and these are car tires. Car tires. These synthetic tires are much stronger than the rubber ones. So even if they stop the use of petrol to drive cars, the need for car tires will remain. And the petroleum tires are much better than the ones of natural rubber. So that one will never go away. And it doesn't pollute. You can tell me whether it pollutes the atmosphere at all. Secondly, chairs and car seats. My people use another word which I cannot follow, upholstery or something like that. But me, I prefer to call them chairs. Car chairs made of oil. Polyester. Hii shati ambayo nimevaa 65% is polyester. Ukiwa unataka a shirt which is very strong and easy to clean, the one of 65 polyester, 35 cotton. Ndio nimevaa hapa. So the demand for polyester will not go away and should not go away, and it's not a problem to the environment. Nasikia madawa, medicine, that also oil is used in medicine. I don't know how. I've never taken any oil for medicine, but bitumen, asphalt, kupiga lami, hizi lami. Cosmetics, detergents, packages, kufunga vitu. Here, the environment issue is no longer greenhouse gases, but waste disposal. If we can get a waste disposal, a good waste disposal policy, then the oil will be here forever. We shall stop using it to drive cars, because that's a bad use. But it will be used forever for all these purposes. Here, the environment issue is no longer greenhouse gases, but waste disposal. Can we not perpetually recycle some of those for reuse? Can't we go on recycling them? They can answer that. Therefore, Tanzanians, Ugandans, all the global citizens, the East African pipeline business is a good, durable business. It will create jobs during construction. Last night at yesterday in the press conference, we saw that the pipeline would take $1.3 billion, but 600 million of that is on the construction. And then the other 270 something is on the factory which they will put in Igunga to heat the sections and so on. And then internal transport. So almost 900 million will be spent, mainly in Tanzania actually, because the portion of Uganda is small. But I don't mind because many of my relatives are in Tanzania, so. Other service providers will also be able to supply. Now, the crying of Mwehide, you see, I don't want to divert myself, but what he's talking about is the enclave economy. In Uganda, with these wonderful people, some of them are here, the politicians, forget about the civil servants, those ones are out of the question. Kwa sababu hawajasikia, do you call it injili, the gospel? Hawa watumishi wa serikali hawajasikia injili ya ukombozi. So I don't even quarrel with them because they are not part of me. Watu nagombana nao ni wanasiasa wenzangu who are part of the movement, who should have known. Because you see, like for instance, until 7 years ago, 68% of the homesteads in Uganda were in what they were calling subsistence economy. Uchumi to produce for the stomach only. Uchumi wa kuzalisha mali ya tumbo peke yake. 68%. So when you see these people here, honorable minister, honorable what, they have got 68% of their people. Wanatumikia tumbo peke yake. So what this young man is saying, this Mwehiri is the son of my schoolmate. If 68% of the people are out of the economy, out of the money economy, then what do you expect? What that Stanbic Bank should be working for, okay, work for oil, all right, but also work to get the 68% into the money economy. That's what we should be working about. So when this young man comes here, pension funds in California, I don't know where. Now, because of my struggle with these people, I had to involve the army. The army, chukua mbegu kwa wale watu ambao wamelala, waanze kulima kahawa. Because of that struggle now, recently, they brought a new, you call it takwimu? Is it called takwimu? Statistics. They brought a new takwimu to her. Now, manyumba, these are households. Manyumba ambayo bado yanalala ni 39 kwa 100 from 68. You can imagine. Up to 2013, when I involved the army, 68% of the Ugandans were just watazamaji wa mpira. As far as the economy is concerned. So, now how can you bring in pipeline, what? But how will they come? They're outside. You should bring them in. That's why I had to involve the army to kuchukua mbegu ya kahawa, ya matunda. We called it Operation Wealth Creation. That's how we were able to bring the watazamaji from 68% to now 39%. So I think we should look at that along all this whole pipeline. That's what I was discussing with Her Excellency yesterday about mifugo, kwa mfano. Because 1986, our Uganda walikuwa wana kampani yao ya taifa ya maziwa. Walikuwa wananunua unga ya maziwa kutoka Denmark. Wanaleta unga ya maziwa, kufika pale Kampala, wanaweka maji ya Victoria, wanapaka chapa, Uganda Dairy Corporation. The only Ugandan thing there was maji. But because of the struggle now, you hear that they have more milk now, surplus, so what they call surplus milk. So I think here along this route, if there are people who are just asleep, manyumba, we should wake them up, produce maziwa, so that maziwa chakula, so that they sell to these, to our wafanyakazi. I'm about to finish. I'm very sorry, Your Excellency. Unlike Japan or Korea or other service providers, will also be able to supply those who work in the oil sector, e.g. hotels, transport, food supply, etc. Unlike Japan or Korea or Saudi Arabia, who either do not have oil or only have oil, East Africa has got everything. Agriculture, minerals, forests, oil, gas, etc. Once the environmental concerns are addressed, the sky is the limit. I thank everybody for giving me the opportunity to put forward a long-held Pan-African view. Thank you so much.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Yoweri Kaguta Museveni, Rais wa Jamhuri ya Uganda. Kwa mara nyingine tena niombe tumpigie makofi Mheshimiwa Rais. Kwa heshima na taadhima, sasa ni kuombe Mheshimiwa Samia Suluhu Hassan, Rais wa Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania, ili nawe uweze kuzungumza na hadhira hii ambapo ndio itakuwa inahitimisha ratiba yetu kwa siku ya leo. Ni kuombe Mheshimiwa Rais, tafadhali.
Nakushukuru MC. Ndugu zangu washiriki, baada ya lecture ile ya General Museveni, nadhani nitasema kipi kipya, lakini kwa sababu nimeitwa ngoja niongee. Mheshimiwa General Yoweri Museveni, yesterday you were my brother, today you are a general. Rais wa Jamhuri ya Uganda, Mheshimiwa Waziri Mkuu wa Tanzania, waheshimiwa mawaziri mliopo toka Tanzania na Uganda, waheshimiwa makatibu wakuu mliopo hapa toka nchi zetu mbili, waheshimiwa mabalozi na wakuu wa mashirika Umoja wa Mataifa mliopo, jamii ya wafanyabiashara kutoka Tanzania na Uganda, viongozi mbalimbali mliopo, wanahabari, mabibi na mabwana, na wasalimu kwa jina la Jamhuri ya Muungano wa Tanzania, na wasalimu kwa ushirikiano na Uganda. Your Excellency, allow me at the outset to express my gratitude to you, Your Excellency, for taking time out of your busy schedule to be here today to participate in this business symposium, which focuses on the progress and development of the oil and gas sector, including the ECO project, as well as discussing the mechanisms and conducts business is being done in our two countries and how to promote it. Your Excellency, the President, I would like also to extend my appreciation for the organizers of this event, both from the government and the private sector. The event of this kind brings synergy between our two governments and the private sector community, who are part and parcel of our overall mission to have an equitable and developed society. We in Tanzania are very happy with your constant push and unwavering support and commitment to the realization of the strategic Eastern African crude oil pipeline project for the mutual benefit of our two countries. Your Excellency, as you are aware that over the years our countries have enjoyed excellent bilateral relations that have enabled close cooperation in various bilateral interventions. Our relationships and cooperation have remained even stronger during this challenging period of COVID-19 pandemic. Your presence here today displays a gesture of overcoming the impossibilities towards realization of socio-economic development in our two countries. Your Excellency, we thank you for the incredible lectures you have delivered here today. That was incredible. You have taken us years back in universities when we were taught on the basic economics, capitalism and economic development in Europe and America. That was our topic in university, early years in the universities. But then you have taken us through the new economic order, technologies and issues and environment. So we thank you very much for that incredible lecture. Your Excellency, the President, let me also thank you for the progress that we have achieved towards implementation of the ECO project since your last visit here in Dar es Salaam, and that was May 20th this year. A number of key milestones have been achieved toward the implementation of the project. Since then, we have received stronger support from the Ugandan government to implement key issues that underpin the development of the project. I was curiously listening to the presentations of what was discussed yesterday, and I'm happy to note that our experts have agreed to explore more areas of cooperation in the sector. ECO project will mean less if other areas of mutual cooperation are not exhausted for mutual interest. So we are very happy, and I heard my Minister for Energy talking about the gas pipeline to Uganda, but also the LNG project here in Tanzania, which is going to add value to the ECO project. So thank you, the symposium members, for your meaningful discussions. I also wish to note that delegates were acquainted with the opportunities this project presents in both countries. Therefore, it is my humble request to all delegates from the private sector to see those opportunities for the benefits of our country. It is your time, and I report it is your time. You must be up for the opportunities. Our two governments are doing everything possible to make sure private sector and local communities benefits from presence of the ECO project and other projects as I have mentioned them. Mheshimiwa Rais, katika kukuza ushirikiano katika sekta ya mafuta na gesi, napenda kuwaarifu na kuwafahamisha wawekezaji na wafanyabiashara hususan Uganda kwa Wizara ya Viwanda na Biashara kupitia Taasisi ya Utafiti na Maendeleo ya Viwanda TIRDO ina uwezo wa kutoa huduma mbalimbali za kibobezi ikiwemo kufanya ukaguzi katika vifaa, bomba ya kuhifadhi na kusafirishia mafuta na gesi kwa kutumia non-destructive test, yani NDT, na inayoharibu destructive test. Kuchomelea ambako kwenye sekta hii ya mafuta na gesi kunahitaji weledi na umakini wa hali ya juu wakati wa ujenzi, usimamizi na marekebisho. Nimefahamishwa kuwa usafirishaji wa mafuta yaliyochakatwa katika mabomba yanayopita kutoka nchi moja kwenda nchi nyingine yatahitaji kukidhi vigezo na viwango maalum, ambapo serikali imeiwezesha TIRDO kuwa na vigezo hivyo. Aidha, TIRDO inatoa huduma ya mafunzo ya ufundi wa kitaalamu kwa wachomeaji, yani certification of professional welders, ambapo wahitimu wataweza kukubalika au kutambulika kimataifa katika shughuli za kuchomea vitu mbalimbali ikiwemo vifaa vya mafuta na gesi. Na ni matumaini yetu kwamba kile kiwanda cha Igunga watakao kwenda kufanya kazi pale ni mafundi waliofundishwa na TIRDO. Na hapa Mheshimiwa Rais, kwa kuwa hili ni kongamano la wafanyabiashara, hatuna budi kuzungumzia uwekezaji katika nyanja nyingine ili kufanya biashara ya mafuta iendane na biashara nyingine. Katika eneo la uwekezaji, Tanzania na Uganda tumejitahidi, lakini bado jana tulikubaliana kwamba hatujafanya vizuri sana, tuendelee kujitahidi. Lakini tunapozungumzia uwekezaji, ni lazima uendane na maendeleo endelevu ya kiuchumi na mifumo inayoimarishwa katika kujenga uwezo wa uzalishaji wa ndani wenye kuunganisha juhudi za kila sekta ya uchumi, yani forward and backward linkages, kumudu kwa kiwango kikubwa cha mahitaji ya soko la ndani na ushindani wa bidhaa kutoka nje. Nchi zetu zimejaliwa kuwa na rasilimali au maliasili nyingi ambazo hazijatumika ipasavyo. Amesema Mheshimiwa Rais hapa, kuwa na rasilimali au maliasili nyingi sio lazima uwe tajiri. Kwa sisi tunazo nyingi, lakini hatuko matajiri kwa sababu hatujazitumia ipasavyo kwa madhumuni ya kukuza uwekezaji. Hivyo basi ni muhimu kuendelea kuvutia uwekezaji katika nyanja mbalimbali ikiwemo viwanda vinavyotumia malighafi za ndani, hususan kwenye sekta za kilimo na maliasili, viwanda vinavyozingatia fursa za kijiografia, viwanda vinavyotumia nguvu kazi zaidi ili kuzalisha ajira, viwanda vinavyoendana na ukuaji wa miji, viwanda vitakavyozalisha bidhaa kukidhi mazingira ya biashara na kuwekeza zaidi kwenye rasilimali watu, na viwanda vinavyozaa viwanda vingine. Viwanda hivyo ni kama vile vya mbolea na kemikali kama alivyovitaja Mheshimiwa Rais hapa, vinavyotokana na byproducts za mafuta lakini pia gesi. Mheshimiwa Rais, kwa upande wa Tanzania, nafarijika kusema kwamba jitihada tulizochukua katika kipindi kifupi cha takriban miezi 8 zimeweza kuleta chachu ya kuongezeka kwa uwekezaji nchini, na kumekuwa na kuongezeka kwa usajili wa miradi ya uwekezaji na kuongezeka kwa idadi ya ajira zinazotarajiwa kutokana na miradi iliyoandikishwa. Maboresho na jitihada yamepelekea pia kupungua muda wa upatikanaji wa vibali vya kazi kwa kuondoa urasimu, na hivi sasa hata ndani ya siku moja mwombaji anaweza kupatiwa kibali kupitia mfumo wa kielektroniki, yani e-permit. Mfumo huu unaruhusu pia upatikanaji wa kibali cha ukaazi, resident and work permit, katika kadi moja. Kabla ya hapo kibali kilikuwa kinachukua miezi 6 au zaidi. Maombi mengi yalikuwa yanakataliwa baada ya mwombaji kulipa a non-refundable fee. Sasa tumehisi hii haiko sawa, tumerekebisha na sasa mambo yanakwenda vizuri. Tumefanya pia marekebisho ya sheria ya kuratibu ajira za wageni, ambapo kwa sasa sheria inaruhusu mwekezaji kuingiza wataalamu hadi 10 kutoka idadi ya 5 ilivyokuwa kabla Oktoba 2021. Vile vile tumeanzisha kituo cha mawasiliano kwa uwekezaji katika kituo cha uwekezaji Tanzania, yani Tanzania Investment Call Center, ili kuhakikisha uundwaji wa mfumo wa ufuatiliaji malalamiko ya uwekezaji na kuwapatia taarifa sahihi. Kituo hiki kimeanzishwa na kinafanya kazi kwa ufanisi. Tunaendelea kufanya maboresho muhimu ya kimuundo na kisheria ili kuhakikisha urahisi wa kuanzisha na kufanya biashara na uwekezaji hapa nchini. Mheshimiwa Rais na ndugu wafanya biashara, pia tumeimarisha jitihada zetu za kutenga na kuendeleza maeneo maalum ya kiuchumi ili kurahisisha uwekezaji mkubwa katika sekta ya viwanda, kilimo, teknolojia na usafirishaji. Katika kufanikisha hayo yote, tutajenga na kuimarisha sekta binafsi ili ikue na kuweza kuakisi utashi wa kisera na malengo ya kitaifa. Hivyo sambamba na haki zinazotolewa, sekta binafsi ina wajibu wa kutekeleza majukumu yatakayoleta tija na kuweza kuendesha biashara kwa kufuata sheria, kanuni na taratibu za nchi, na hatimaye kuweza kulipa kodi na ada stahiki za serikali. Uzoefu unaonesha kuwa nchi nyingi duniani zimefikia viwango vya juu vya maendeleo kutokana na kutenga maeneo mbalimbali ya uwekezaji kupitia skimu mbalimbali kama vile Special Economic Zones, Export Processing Zones na nyingine za aina hiyo, kwa ajili ya kuhakikisha uwekezaji unakuwa kwa kasi na kukuza mauzo ndani na nje ya nchi. Tutaendelea kuhakikisha tunamaliza au kuondoa kabisa vikwazo vyote visivyo vya kikodi, yani non-tariff barriers, kuhakikisha usalama wa mitaji pamoja na uhakika wa kutengeneza faida kwa wawekezaji wanaowekeza Tanzania. Na kwa wafanya biashara wa Uganda, niwaambie kwamba hivi karibuni tutafungua ofisi ndogo ya mamlaka ya bandari mjini Kampala ili kusogeza huduma hizi karibu na nyinyi. Waswahili wanasema mteja ni mfalme, kwa nasi tunasogea kwa mfalme wetu Uganda. Lakini ndani ya ofisi hiyo tutaweka afisa kutoka kituo cha uwekezaji, ambao kwa wale wawekezaji watakaopenda kuja Tanzania wapate taarifa wakiwa pale. Mheshimiwa Rais, naomba sasa nitumie fursa hii tena kuwashukuru waandaaji wa kongamano hili pamoja na washiriki. Ni matumaini yetu kwamba kupitia kongamano hili litachochea zaidi uwekezaji na biashara kati ya nchi zetu mbili. Hivyo naomba kuhamasisha wawekezaji kutoka Uganda kuja Tanzania na Watanzania waende Uganda, kwa sababu tumesema hapa kwamba mipaka iliyopo iliwekwa na wale watu kwa madhumuni ya utawala, lakini sisi tunaweka mipaka mipya ya mabomba, ya gesi, ya mafuta, ya umeme, ya viwanda. Hiyo ndio mipaka yetu sasa. Kwa hiyo wafanya biashara mwe huru kwenda huko na kwenda huko. Mmoja wenu alisema hapa kwamba makongamano kama haya yaendelee, na ni kweli yaendelee, kwa sababu kule nyuma mlikuwa mnavutana, watu wa serikali huku, serikali kule, wafanya biashara na wafanya biashara. Badala ya kukaa na kuangalia vikwazo ni vipi na vipi tutaondosha, mlikuwa mna stick to vikwazo na kuvutana, kuwekeana kauzibe, asije na nyie msiende. Hiyo haisaidii upande wa Uganda wala Tanzania. La maana ni kuondoa vikwazo na wote tukasonga mbele. Kwa hiyo niwaombe mkutane tena mara nyingi, na jana nimewataka, mimi na Mheshimiwa Rais tumewataka watu wetu wa serikali, mawaziri, wakutane haraka kwenye ile tume yetu ya pamoja ushirikiano, waangalie changamoto tulizozizungumza jana ziondoshwe, ili nanyi wafanya biashara muweze kukaa kwenye nani zenu mkijua kwamba serikali imeondosha vikwazo, nanyi muondoshe vya kwenu, ili muweze kufanya kazi kwa haraka na tuone matokeo ya haraka. Wafanya biashara wa Tanzania ni mashahidi. Tulikuwa tunavutana hapa na Kenya, kila kinachokwenda hakipiti, hiki hakipiti na huku hakipiti, kule wakizuia na mkoa wetu naye asema kuanzia leo hakipiti. Lakini tulikaa tukaelezana ukweli, tulikuwa tunachomeana kuku mipakani, dhambi tupu, viumbe wa Mungu, mnamwaga petroli mnachoma, haikuwa na maana. Lakini tumeondosha vikwazo, sasa biashara imekuwa mno. Ukiangalia figa za biashara Kenya na Tanzania imekuwa mno. Tunataka biashara ikakue kwa upande wa Uganda pia, ikakue kwa upande ule pia. Mheshimiwa Rais amesema hapa, aliomba sisi tununue sukari kwake, lakini walisikia statement za waziri wetu kwamba hatutanunua, hatutakubali. Sasa that was nonsense. Mheshimiwa Rais, tutanunua sukari kutoka Uganda. Ndugu zangu, baada ya kusema hayo, niwashukuru na nimshukuru sana Mheshimiwa Rais kwa kuja kukubali kuwa nasi katika kongamano hili. Tunamshukuru kwa mambo mengi aliyotueleza. Kuna watoto wadogo wengi hapa ambao hawakupitia yale ambayo ameyaeleza, leo wameyajua. Naomba wote tukafanye kazi kwa pamoja, tuendeleze nchi zetu. Asanteni sana na Mungu awabariki. Asante sana.
Asante sana Mheshimiwa Rais kwa hotuba hiyo. Naomba kwa mara nyingine tena tumpigie makofi Mheshimiwa Rais tafadhali. Mheshimiwa Rais, waheshimiwa marais, kwa niaba ya wafanyabiashara wa pande zote mbili, nichukue fursa hii kuwashukuru kwa kutenga muda wenu kwa kushiriki katika hafla hii ya ufungaji wa kongamano la wafanyabiashara wa Tanzania na Uganda. Na kwa hotuba hizo basi, Mheshimiwa Rais, na heshima sasa kusema kwamba ndio imetimisha hafla yetu kwa siku hii ya leo, na heshima kuweza kuwaruhusu kuendelea na ratiba nyingine. Nashukuru sana na asanteni.
Sawa, shika langu na shika la kwako sawa. Changu kwanza, chuki zako kaa nazo. Mimi kando na uzalendo ndo mpango. TC, yeah. Umekuja tukaweze kwenda.
Waheshimiwa viongozi na wageni wengine, tumeruhusiwa, tunaweza sasa tukaendelea na ratiba zetu nyingine. Tumeruhusiwa na waheshimiwa marais, viongozi wengine, tunaweza tukaendelea na ratiba zetu. Ndugu wageni walikwa, viongozi na wafanyabiashara, tumeruhusiwa kuweza kuendelea na ratiba zetu. Tunaweza sasa tukaondoka tukaelekea katika shughuli zetu nyingine. Waheshimiwa viongozi, wageni walikwa, mmeruhusiwa muweze kuendelea na ratiba nyingine. Tunaomba sasa muweze kuendelea na ratiba nyingine tafadhali. Ndugu wafanyabiashara, wageni walikwa na viongozi, tumeruhusiwa muweze kuendelea na ratiba zenu nyingine. Mheshimiwa wafanyabiashara, viongozi na wageni walikwa, tunaomba tuweze sasa kuendelea na ratiba zetu nyingine. Ruksa imetolewa, naomba upigaji picha sasa ufanyike nje tafadhali. Mnaopiga picha katika eneo hilo, tunaomba mtoke nje sasa. Naomba muendelee na ratiba nyingine. Haturuhusu tena upigaji picha kwa eneo hilo la viongozi tafadhali. Na upande wa pili naomba sasa tuache kupiga muziki. Tumefikia mwisho wa ratiba yetu.